The morning of the competition, Lily woke up with butterflies in her stomach. She had been preparing for this day for 8 months, practicing the same piece over and over until her fingers could play it in her sleep. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened 3 weeks ago. The accident wasn't dramatic or life-threatening. She was helping her mom carry groceries from the car when she slipped on a patch of ice. Her head hit the concrete driveway, and for a moment, everything went dark. When she opened her eyes in the emergency room, the lights seemed too bright and the words on the eye chart looked blurry and doubled. The doctor said it was a concussion with some optical nerve damage. Nothing permanent, he assured her parents, but she would need time to heal. Reading would be difficult for a while. Screens would give her headaches. And sheet music? Forget about it. The tiny notes would swim and blur together like ants on the page. Lily remembered crying that night in her bedroom. The regional competition was just 3 weeks away. She had earned her spot through months of early morning practice sessions and late nights perfecting every measure. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had submitted her entry months ago. The piece she chose was challenging even for advanced students. Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor, dark, moody, and technically demanding. Her parents suggested she withdraw from the competition. There would be other chances, they said. Her health was more important. But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that if she gave up now, she might never get this opportunity again. The regional competition was a gateway to the state finals, and from there, scholarship opportunities at prestigious music schools. So she made a decision that seemed crazy to everyone around her. She would perform anyway, but not by reading the music. She would play it entirely from memory. And to prove to herself that she truly knew the piece, she would do it blindfolded. Her piano teacher thought she was being stubborn. Her best friend thought she was being brave. Her older brother thought she was being ridiculous. But once Lily made up her mind, nothing could change it. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of her life. She sat at the piano for hours each day, running through the piece with her eyes closed. She practiced the finger positions until her muscles remembered every stretch, every jump, every delicate trill. She listened to recordings of the piece at night, visualizing her hands on the keys. She played it in the car, on the bus, while eating dinner, tapping her fingers on invisible keys. Mrs. Patterson worked with her every afternoon, calling out corrections, helping her refine the dynamics and expression. At first, Lily made mistakes. She'd lose her place or fumble a passage, but slowly something shifted. Without the visual crutch of sheet music, she started feeling the music differently. Her fingers seemed to know where to go before her mind did. The piece became less about reading notes and more about expressing emotion. The day of the competition arrived cold and gray. The venue was a historic concert hall downtown with velvet seats and crystal chandeliers. Lily arrived with her parents and Mrs. Patterson, clutching the black silk blindfold her grandmother had given her for good luck. It was soft and smooth, completely blocking out light when tied properly. The waiting room backstage buzzed with nervous energy. Dozens of young pianists sat with their families, some practicing scales on their laps, others listening to music through headphones. Lily noticed a few competitors glancing at her blindfold with curious expressions. One girl leaned over and asked if she was feeling sick. Lily just smiled and said she had a unique approach planned. When the competition began, Lily watched the other performers through a gap in the stage curtain. They were all talented, their fingers flying across the keys with precision. Some played classical pieces, others chose contemporary works. Each performance was polished and professional, and each performer had sheet music propped up on the piano's music stand. The judges sat in the front row, 3 of them, each with clipboards and stern expressions. The one in the middle, an older man with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses, looked particularly serious. Lily learned later his name was Mr. Harrison, and he had performed with major symphony orchestras around the world. He was known for being tough but fair, with impossibly high standards. As Lily's turn approached, she felt her heart racing. Mrs. Patterson squeezed her shoulder and whispered words of encouragement. Her mom hugged her tight. Her dad gave her a thumbs up. Then the stage manager called her name. Lily walked onto the stage, her footsteps echoing in the large hall. The audience clapped politely as she approached the grand piano at center stage. The instrument was beautiful, a glossy black Steinway that seemed to glow under the stage lights. She placed her blindfold on top of the piano and bowed to the judges. Before she sat down, she addressed the audience. Her voice was smaller than she intended, but it carried in the quiet hall. She explained briefly about her accident and her decision to perform from memory. She held up the blindfold and said she would be wearing it during her performance. A murmur rippled through the audience. Lily saw Mr. Harrison lean toward the judge next to him and say something. Even from the stage, she could read his expression: skepticism, doubt, maybe even annoyance. He sat back in his chair with his arms crossed, clearly expecting this to be a disaster. That look almost broke Lily's confidence. For a second, she considered abandoning the blindfold idea and just playing normally. But then she thought about all those hours of practice. All the time she played perfectly with her eyes closed. All the work she had put in to get to this moment. She tied the blindfold securely around her head, making sure it was comfortable but tight enough that no light could seep through. The world went black. She could hear everything more clearly now. The rustling of programs in the audience, someone coughing in the back row, the hum of the air conditioning. Lily felt for the piano bench and sat down. She placed her hands on her lap, took a deep breath and centered herself. She thought about the first note, could hear it in her mind before she even touched the keys. She lifted her hands and positioned them over the keyboard, her fingers hovering just above the ivory. This was it. No turning back now. In a few seconds, she would begin playing one of the most challenging pieces she had ever attempted, in front of judges and an audience, completely blindfolded. One mistake, one memory lapse, and the whole performance could fall apart. Mr. Harrison shifted in his seat. She couldn't see him, but she could sense his impatience. She imagined him checking his watch, already writing her off as a foolish teenager trying a stunt for attention. But Lily knew something he didn't. She knew this piece wasn't in her sheet music anymore. It wasn't even in her hands. It was in her heart, and she was about to show everyone in that hall what real music could sound like. Lily's fingers touched the keys and the first note rang out into the silent hall. It was a low C-sharp, deep and resonant, the kind of note that makes you feel something in your chest before your brain even registers the sound. She held it, letting it fill the space, and then her left hand joined in with the famous descending pattern that opens the piece. The moment she started playing, something strange happened. All her nervousness vanished. The darkness behind the blindfold wasn't scary anymore. It felt safe, like a cocoon where only she and the music existed. Her fingers found each key with perfect accuracy, moving through the opening phrases like they had done 1,000 times before. In the audience, people leaned forward in their seats. The girl who had asked if Lily was sick stopped fidgeting with her program. Parents who had been checking their phones put them away. Even the sound technician in the back of the hall paused his work to listen. Mr. Harrison uncrossed his arms. His expression shifted from skeptical to curious. He glanced at the other judges, who were equally transfixed. One of them had stopped writing notes entirely. Lily didn't know any of this was happening. She couldn't see the audience's reaction or the judges' changing expressions. All she knew was the music flowing from her fingertips. The piece moved from the haunting opening into the first complex passage, where the right hand had to play rapid notes while the left maintained the steady, brooding bass line. This was where many pianists struggled, where the coordination between hands could fall apart. But Lily's hands worked perfectly together. 8 months of practice had trained her muscles to work independently. Her right hand danced across the higher keys while her left hand anchored the melody below. The contrast between the delicate treble notes and the powerful bass created exactly the emotional tension. Rachmaninoff had intended Mrs. Patterson sat in the third row with tears already forming in her eyes. She had taught piano for 30 years and had never seen a student connect with a piece quite like this. During their practice sessions, Lily had been good, technically proficient. But this was something else entirely. The blindfold had somehow freed Lily to play not just with her hands but with her soul. The piece moved into the middle section, where the tempo picks up and the dynamics swell. This was the part that required the most confidence, where a player had to commit fully to the emotion without holding back. Lily had always been a bit reserved during this section in practice, afraid of playing too loud or too aggressively. But now on stage she'd let go completely. Her whole body moved with the music. She swayed slightly as the melody built, her shoulders rising and falling with the phrases. When the music demanded power, she gave it everything. her fingers striking the keys with authority. When it called for tenderness, she played so softly that people held their breath to hear. A woman in the 5th row wiped her eyes with a tissue. A teenage boy who had been forced to attend by his parents found himself completely absorbed. Even the ushers standing by the doors had stopped moving, not wanting to create any sound that might disturb the performance. Mr. Harrison's clipboard now lay forgotten on his lap. He was watching Lily with an expression of pure astonishment. He had judged hundreds of competitions over his career, had heard countless talented young musicians. Many of them played difficult pieces with technical perfection. But very few of them truly understood what they were playing. Very few could make an audience feel something real. This 15-year-old girl, performing Blindfolded, was doing exactly that. The piece approached its most difficult section, a cascade of notes that descended and then climbed back up the keyboard in a furious rush. This passage required absolute precision. One wrong note, one misplaced finger, and the whole thing would collapse into chaos. It was the moment where Mr. Harrison expected the performance to finally crack, where the gimmick of the blindfold would reveal itself as just that, a gimmick. Lily felt the difficult passage approaching. Behind her blindfold, she visualized the keyboard in her mind. She could see the pattern her fingers needed to make, could feel the stretch required to reach each interval. She had played this section hundreds of times in her bedroom, in the school practice room, in her dreams. Her hands moved faster, executing the cascade with breathtaking accuracy. Every note was clean and clear. The sound was like water rushing down a mountainside, wild but controlled, powerful but precise. And then came the climb back up, each note building on the last, creating momentum that seemed unstoppable. The audience was completely silent now. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not even the sound of breathing. Everyone was holding their collective breath, willing Lily to make it through this impossible passage, and she did. She sailed through it flawlessly, her fingers never hesitating, never faltering. When she reached the top of the climb and began the descent back into the final section, a few people in the audience let out soft gasps of amazement. Mr. Harrison shook his head slowly, a small smile forming on his lips. He had been wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. This wasn't a stunt or a gimmick. This was a masterclass in musical memory and emotional expression. The piece moved toward its conclusion. The tempo slowed again, the music becoming introspective and haunting. Lily played these final measures with such delicacy that it felt like she was sharing a secret with everyone in the hall. The notes seemed to hang in the air, each one precious and fragile. Her left hand played the final bass notes, deep and somber. Her right hand added the last high notes above, creating one final moment of tension. Then came the ending. 3 decisive chords that Rachmaninoff marked to be played with conviction and strength. Lily put everything she had into those final chords. They rang out powerfully, filling every corner of the concert hall, echoing off the walls and ceiling. She held the last chord, letting it sustain naturally, the sound slowly fading until it disappeared into silence. For 3 long seconds, nobody moved. The silence was so complete it felt almost sacred. Lily kept her hands on the keys, the blindfold still covering her eyes, unsure if she should move or wait. She couldn't see what was happening, couldn't read the room. Then it began. A single person started clapping, then 2, then 5, then suddenly the entire hall erupted into thunderous applause. But this wasn't the polite, obligatory clapping that had followed other performances. This was real, genuine, overwhelming appreciation. People rose to their feet. A standing ovation was extremely rare at regional competitions, especially for a preliminary round performance. But person after person stood clapping and cheering. Parents, other competitors, even the stage crew were on their feet. Lily reached up with trembling hands and removed her blindfold. The sudden brightness made her blink. For a moment she couldn't process what she was seeing. Everyone was standing. Everyone was applauding. Some people had tears on their faces. Mrs. Patterson was openly crying, clapping so hard her hands must have hurt. Lily's parents were hugging each other, both of them beaming with pride. Her brother, who usually acted too cool for everything, was whistling and cheering louder than anyone. And Mr. Harrison, the judge who had scoffed at her blindfold just minutes ago, was not only standing but smiling broader than anyone else in the room. Lily stood up from the piano bench, her legs feeling shaky beneath her. She bowed to the audience, still overwhelmed by the response. The applause continued for what felt like forever. She bowed again, clutching the blindfold in her hand, and then walked off stage on wobbly knees. The moment she stepped into the wings, Mrs. Patterson grabbed her in a tight hug. Her teacher was laughing and crying at the same time, saying things like, "I can't believe you just did that," and "That was incredible," over and over. Lily's parents rushed backstage, her mom wrapping her in another embrace while her dad kept saying he had recorded the whole thing on his phone. Other competitors and their families approached her, offering congratulations. Some of the younger students looked at her with awe, like she had just performed magic. A few of the more competitive players seemed less thrilled, but even they had to acknowledge what they had witnessed was special. The competition continued for another 2 hours. Lily sat in the audience with her family, trying to focus on the other performances, but her mind kept replaying her own. Had she really done it? Had she actually played the entire piece without a single mistake? It felt surreal, like something that had happened to someone else. When the last performer finished, the judges announced they would need 30 minutes to deliberate. The audience filed out to the lobby for refreshments. Lily found herself surrounded by people wanting to talk to her. An older woman said the performance reminded her of why she fell in love with classical music as a child. A music teacher from another school asked about her training. A local newspaper reporter wanted to do an interview. Through the crowd, Lily saw Mr. Harrison making his way toward her. Her heart jumped. Up close, he was taller than she expected, with kind eyes behind those wire-rimmed glasses. He waited patiently for the crowd to thin, and when he finally reached her, he extended his hand. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice warm despite his serious expression. "When I saw that blindfold, I thought you were playing a trick, trying to get attention through theatrics rather than talent. I was wrong." Lily shook his hand, not quite sure what to say. This was one of the most respected pianists in the region, maybe the whole state, and he was apologizing to her. "What you did up there," Mr. Harrison continued, "that wasn't just memorization. That wasn't just technical skill. You became the music. You let it flow through you. I've been judging competitions for 25 years, and I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen a performance that moved me the way yours did." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You know, when we perform, we often rely on the sheet music as a safety net. It's there if we forget, if we get lost. But that safety net can also be a barrier. It keeps us in our heads, focused on reading the notes correctly, worried about making mistakes. You didn't have that barrier today. You were free to just feel the music and share it with us." Lily felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had been so focused on proving she could do it, on overcoming the obstacle of her injury, that she hadn't fully understood what she had actually accomplished until this moment. "Thank you," she managed to say. "That means everything to me." Mr. Harrison smiled. "Whatever happens today with the competition results, don't stop playing. You have something rare. And if you ever need a recommendation for music school, you call me." He handed her a business card with his contact information. Mrs. Patterson joined them, and she and Mr. Harrison talked for a few minutes about Lily's training and potential. Lily half listened, still processing everything. Her brother appeared with a soda for her, and she realized she was incredibly thirsty. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving her feeling exhausted but happy. When the 30 minutes were up, everyone filed back into the concert hall. The judges took their positions at the front. Mr. Harrison held a microphone, preparing to announce the results. He started by thanking all the participants and acknowledging the high level of talent displayed throughout the day. "This was one of the most difficult judging sessions I've ever been part of," he said. "We had exceptional performances across the board. However, there are always moments in competitions where something transcendent happens, where a performer reminds us why we dedicate our lives to music in the first place." Lily's heart was pounding. She told herself that even if she didn't win, the experience had been worth it. She had proven to herself that she could overcome the obstacle her injury had created. That was victory enough. Mr. Harrison announced third place, and a boy who had played a beautiful Chopin piece went up to receive his certificate. Then second place, awarded to a girl who had performed a complex contemporary work. Both were excellent performances, and the audience clapped enthusiastically. "And now for first place," Mr. Harrison said, pausing for effect. This decision was unanimous among the judges. The winner not only demonstrated exceptional technical skill, but also showed us the true heart of musical performance. First place goes to Lily Chen. The hall erupted in applause again. Lily sat frozen for a second. unable to believe what she had heard. Her mom had to nudge her to stand up. She walked to the stage in a daze, her face flushed with emotion. Mr. Harrison handed her a trophy and a certificate, then shook her hand again, this time for the benefit of the photographer who was capturing the moment. "You earned this," he said quietly, just to her. Every bit of it. The rest of the award ceremony passed in a blur. There were more photos, more congratulations, more people wanting to talk to her. Lily learned that winning first place meant she would advance to the state competition in 2 months. It also came with a small scholarship and an invitation to perform at a regional music festival. As the crowd finally began to disperse and families headed home, Lily found a quiet moment alone in the now empty concert hall. She walked back to the stage and looked out at the rows of velvet seats. Just hours ago, she had stood here terrified, blindfolded, about to attempt something that seemed impossible. She thought about the accident, about hitting her head on the driveway, about the doctor's diagnosis that had threatened to derail her dreams. At the time, it had felt like the worst thing that could happen. But in a strange way, it had led her to this moment. The injury had forced her to find a new way to connect with music, to trust her instincts and her training rather than relying on her eyes. Mrs. Patterson found her standing there. "Ready to go home, champion?" her teacher asked, putting an arm around her shoulders. Lily nodded, but she took one more look at the piano on stage. That beautiful Steinway where she had poured out her heart. She made a silent promise to herself that this was just the beginning. The state competition would be even more challenging, and beyond that, who knew what opportunities might come. Her vision was slowly improving. The doctor said in another few weeks she would be able to read sheet music again without difficulty. But Lily had discovered something valuable during these weeks of practicing blindfolded. She had learned that the most important part of music wasn't seeing the notes on a page. It was feeling them in your soul and having the courage to share that feeling with the world. As she walked out of the concert hall with her family and teacher, trophy in hand, Lily felt different than she had that morning. She felt like someone who had faced her fears and come out stronger. Someone who had turned an obstacle into an opportunity. Someone who had proven that sometimes the things we think will break us actually help us discover what we're truly capable of. The afternoon sun was setting as they reached the parking lot, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lily's phone buzzed with messages from friends who had heard about her win. Her brother was already posting photos on social media. Her dad was planning a celebration dinner, but Lily was already thinking about tomorrow, about getting back to the piano, about preparing for the state competition, about all the music still waiting to be played, all the emotions still waiting to be expressed, all the audiences still waiting to be moved. Because that's what real musicians do. They don't rest on their victories. They wake up the next day ready to practice, ready to improve, ready to share their gift with anyone willing to listen. And Lily was ready for all of it. 2 weeks after the regional competition, Lily's life had changed in ways she never expected. The video her dad recorded on his phone had somehow made its way onto social media, and within days it had been viewed by thousands of people. Local news stations called asking for interviews. The school principal invited her to perform at the next assembly. Even strangers recognized her at the grocery store. But the attention wasn't what mattered most to Lily. What mattered was sitting at her piano every afternoon, preparing for the state competition. Her vision had improved significantly. She could read sheet music again without the words swimming across the page. The headaches had faded. Her doctor had cleared her for normal activities. Yet something interesting happened when she tried to go back to playing with sheet music in front of her. It felt wrong somehow, restrictive. During those weeks of practicing blindfolded, she had developed a different relationship with music. She had learned to trust her hands, to feel the rhythm in her body, to let the emotion guide her fingers rather than relying on visual cues. So she made another decision that surprised everyone. For the state competition, she would perform blindfolded again. Mrs. Patterson wasn't sure about this choice. "You proved your point at regionals," her teacher said during one of their practice sessions. "You don't have to keep doing this. Your vision is fine now. You could play normally and still win." Lily understood her teacher's concern, but this wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about playing the way that felt most authentic to her. "When I wear the blindfold," she tried to explain, "I'm not distracted by anything. I can focus completely on the music, on what I'm trying to say through it. It's like the rest of the world disappears and it's just me and the piano. Mrs. Patterson studied her student's face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but we're choosing a different piece for states. Rachmaninoff was impressive, but if you're going to compete at this level, we need to show range and growth. They selected Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 14, better known as the Moonlight Sonata. It was a piece that required a different kind of emotional depth than the Rachmaninoff. Where the prelude was dramatic and powerful, the Moonlight Sonata was contemplative and haunting, especially the famous first movement. The third movement would showcase her technical abilities with its rapid, almost frantic passages. Learning a new piece from scratch to perform Blindfolded was even harder than Lily anticipated. The Rachmaninoff had been in her fingers for 8 months before the accident. She knew it intimately. But Beethoven's sonata was different, more nuanced, requiring subtle touches that took weeks to master. There were days when she wanted to give up. Days when her fingers stumbled over passages she had played perfectly the day before. Days when she wondered if she was being foolish. If she should just play with the music in front of her like everyone else. During one particularly frustrating practice session, she sat at the piano with tears streaming down her face. She had been working on the same section of the third movement for an hour, and it still wasn't right. Her hands ached. Her back hurt from sitting so long, and the state competition was only 3 weeks away. Her brother found her like that. He was home from college for the weekend and had been listening from his room upstairs. He came down and sat on the couch near the piano, not saying anything at first. Just being there. You know, he finally said. When I'm stuck on something in my classes, my professor always tells me to step back and remember why I started. Why did you start playing piano in the first place? Lily wiped her eyes and thought about his question. She remembered being 4 years old, hearing her grandmother play an old upright piano at her house. The sound had seemed magical to her young ears. She had begged for lessons. Her parents found Mrs. Patterson, and that first day at the piano, pressing down the keys and hearing the notes ring out, felt like discovering a secret language. I started because it made me happy, she said quietly, because I loved how it sounded, how it made me feel. Her brother nodded. So maybe stop worrying so much about getting it perfect. Just play it the way that makes you happy. It was simple advice, but it shifted something in Lily's mind. The next day, she approached her practice differently. Instead of drilling the difficult sections over and over with grim determination, she played through the entire sonata, mistakes and all, just focusing on the emotion of each movement. She let herself feel the melancholy of the first movement, the gentle hope of the second, the urgency of the third. And somehow, the difficult passages became easier. Her fingers found the right notes because she wasn't overthinking them. She was just feeling them. The weeks passed quickly. Before she knew it, the day of the state competition arrived. This venue was even more impressive than the regional hall. It was a university auditorium with tiered seating for over 1,000 people. The piano was a concert grand, bigger than any instrument Lily had played on before. The competition format was different too. Instead of all the performances happening in one day, they were spread across 3 days, with different categories performing on different evenings. Lily was scheduled for the second night, competing in the advanced youth division. She arrived early with her family and Mrs. Patterson. The backstage area was filled with serious-looking students, many of them older than Lily. Some were warming up on practice pianos in small rooms. Others sat with headphones on, eyes closed, visualizing their performances. Lily found a quiet corner and tied her blindfold loosely around her neck, not covering her eyes yet. She wanted to get used to wearing it, to feel its presence. She closed her eyes and ran through the Moonlight Sonata in her mind, hearing every note, feeling every emotion. When her name was called, she felt surprisingly calm. The nerves that had consumed her at regionals were gone. She wasn't worried about what people would think or whether the judges would be skeptical. She was just ready to share something beautiful with whoever was willing to listen. She walked onto the stage and was momentarily stunned by the size of the audience. The auditorium was nearly full. Hundreds of faces looked back at her. Bright lights illuminated the stage, making it hard to see past the first few rows. Lily approached the microphone at the side of the stage. She had prepared a brief introduction, but standing there under those lights, facing all those people, she decided to speak from her heart instead. A few weeks ago, I had an accident that affected my vision, she began, her voice steady and clear. At first, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen right before my first big competition. But that accident taught me something important. It taught me that music isn't about seeing notes on a page. It's about feeling something deep inside and having the courage to share it with others. She pulled the blindfold from around her neck and held it up. I'm going to perform Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata blindfolded tonight. Not because I have to anymore. My vision is fine now, but because this is how I connect most deeply with the music. This is how I can share with you what Beethoven was feeling when he composed this piece over 200 years ago. She tied the blindfold over her eyes and walked to the piano. The audience was silent. She sat down, adjusted the bench slightly, and placed her hands over the keys. She took a deep breath, finding that centered space inside herself where the music lived, and then she began to play. The opening notes of the first movement floated out into the auditorium, soft and ethereal. This movement was marked to be played like a funeral march, slow and mournful. Lily had learned that Beethoven wrote it during a difficult period in his life, when he was beginning to lose his hearing. The piece carried the weight of that loss, that grief, that fear of being separated from the thing he loved most. Lily poured all of that emotion into her playing. She thought about her own fear of losing music after her accident, about those dark moments when she wondered if she would ever perform again. She channeled that into the keys, and the sound that emerged was heartbreaking and beautiful. In the audience, people sat transfixed. Some closed their own eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others watched Lily's hands moving across the keys with perfect precision despite the blindfold. A few wiped away tears, moved by the raw emotion in every phrase. The first movement ended, and after the briefest pause, Lily moved into the second movement. This one was lighter, almost playful, a moment of relief between the darkness of the first and third movements. Her fingers danced across the keys, bringing out the delicate melody. The second movement flowed effortlessly under Lily's fingers. It was the shortest of the three movements, a gentle interlude that gave both the performer and the audience a moment to breathe. She played it with tenderness, each note clear and purposeful, like small drops of water creating ripples in a still pond. Then came the transition into the third movement, and this was where the Moonlight Sonata revealed its true power. The third movement was a storm after the calm, a release of all the tension that had been building through the first two parts. It required speed, precision, and an almost reckless abandon that challenged even the most skilled pianists. Lily felt her heart rate pick up as she launched into the opening of the third movement. Her right hand flew across the keys in rapid arpeggios, while her left hand provided the driving bass line. This was the section she had struggled with during practice, the part that had brought her to tears just weeks ago. But now, on this stage, something clicked. Her fingers moved faster than conscious thought. She wasn't thinking about which key to hit next or how to position her hands. Her body simply knew. The hours of practice, the muscle memory, the deep understanding of the music all came together in this moment. The notes cascaded out in a furious rush. The piano sang under her hands, the sound filling every corner of the massive auditorium. People in the back rows could feel the vibrations of the bass notes. The rapid passages in the treble seemed to sparkle in the air like fireworks. Lily was completely absorbed in the music. Behind the blindfold, she wasn't seeing darkness anymore. She was seeing the music itself, feeling it move through her like electricity. When the third movement called for power, she gave it everything. When it demanded delicacy in the midst of chaos, her fingers responded with feather-light touches. There was a particularly challenging section about 2/3 through the movement, where the hands had to cross over each other repeatedly while maintaining the relentless tempo. Many pianists slowed down here, unable to keep up the pace. But Lily had practiced this section so many times that her hands knew exactly where to go. They crossed and uncrossed in a complex dance, never missing a beat, never hitting a wrong note. In the judges section, 3 professional musicians sat with wide eyes. They had been skeptical when they saw another blindfolded performer on the schedule. After Lily's regional win had gone viral, several other competitors had tried the same trick at various competitions, most with disastrous results. The judges had assumed this would be another publicity stunt, but what they were witnessing was far beyond any stunt. This was artistry of the highest level. The head judge, a woman named Dr. Chen who had performed with orchestras around the world, found herself leaning forward in her seat, completely captivated. She had played this exact piece countless times in her own career, and she knew every difficulty it contained. Watching this young girl navigate it flawlessly while blindfolded was almost unbelievable. The third movement built toward its explosive conclusion. The tempo increased even more, pushing toward a frantic climax. Lily's hands were moving so fast they were almost a blur. Sweat formed on her forehead from the physical exertion, but she didn't slow down. She drove toward the ending with total commitment, her whole body engaged in the performance. The final passage arrived, a descending run that covered nearly the entire keyboard, followed by powerful concluding chords. Lily executed the run perfectly, her fingers racing down the keys, and then she struck the final chords with such force that the sound seemed to shake the auditorium. The last note rang out, sustained by the pedal, gradually fading into silence. Lily kept her hands on the keys, her chest heaving from the exertion, the blindfold still covering her eyes. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the auditorium exploded with sound. The applause was deafening. It wasn't the polite, measured clapping of a formal competition. It was the kind of wild, enthusiastic response usually reserved for professional concerts. People leaped to their feet, shouting and cheering. The sound went on, wave after wave of appreciation. Lily removed her blindfold with shaking hands and stood to face the audience. The lights were bright, but she could see hundreds of people standing, clapping, some with their hands raised above their heads. She bowed, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the response. Mrs. Patterson was on her feet in the audience, applauding so hard her hands had gone red. Lily's parents were hugging each other, both crying. Her brother had his phone out recording, but his hands were shaking so much the video would probably be unusable. The applause continued for nearly 2 minutes before finally beginning to fade. Lily bowed 3 more times, then walked off stage on legs that felt like rubber. The moment she was in the wings, she collapsed onto a chair, her whole body trembling from adrenaline and emotion. A stage manager handed her a bottle of water, which she drank gratefully. Other competitors waiting to perform looked at her with a mixture of awe and intimidation. How could anyone follow a performance like that? The competition continued, though Lily barely registered the other performances. Her mind was still processing what had just happened. She had done it. She had played the entire Moonlight Sonata, one of the most challenging pieces in the classical repertoire, completely blindfolded, without a single mistake. When all the performances were finished and the judges retired to deliberate, Lily sat with her family in the audience. Her mom kept squeezing her hand. Her dad couldn't stop smiling. Even her brother, who usually acted too cool to show emotion, told her it was the most incredible thing he had ever seen. The wait for the results felt endless. Finally, the judges returned and took their positions at the front of the auditorium. Dr. Chen held the microphone, her expression serious but warm. "This has been an extraordinary evening of music," she began. "The level of talent we witnessed tonight represents the future of classical performance. These young musicians have dedicated countless hours to their craft, and it shows in every note they played." She paused, looking directly at where Lily sat. However, there are rare moments in any judge's career when you witness something that transcends technical skill, something that reminds you why music has the power to move the human soul. Tonight, we experienced one of those moments. Lily's heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone around her must be able to hear it. Dr. Chen announced the 3rd and 2nd place winners, both excellent pianists who received enthusiastic applause. Then she turned her attention to 1st place. Our 1st place winner tonight didn't just play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, she embodied it. She took us on a journey through darkness and light, through sorrow and hope, through quiet contemplation and explosive passion, and she did all of this while blindfolded, not as a gimmick but as a profound demonstration of what it means to truly connect with music. The judge smiled. 1st place and the recipient of the state championship title is Lily Chen. The auditorium erupted again. People were on their feet before Lily even stood up. She made her way to the stage feeling like she was floating. Dr. Chen handed her a large trophy, much bigger than the one from regionals, along with a certificate and an envelope. This envelope contains a full scholarship to our summer intensive program, Dr. Chen said quietly as they shook hands. "And I hope you'll consider applying to our university when the time comes. We would be honored to have you in our music program." After more photos and congratulations, after the crowd finally dispersed and the auditorium began to empty, Lily found herself standing alone on the stage one more time. She looked out at the empty seats, thinking about all the people who had filled them earlier, all the lives that had been touched by the music she shared. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Harrison, the judge from regionals who had become a mentor to her. Watched the live stream. Knew you could do it. This is just the beginning, Lily. Keep playing, keep growing, keep sharing your gift with the world. Mrs. Patterson appeared beside her on the stage. You know what the beautiful thing is? Her teacher said. Your vision is completely healed now. You could go back to playing with sheet music anytime you want. But you've discovered something more valuable than sight. You've discovered insight. You've learned to see the music with your heart instead of your eyes. Lily nodded, understanding the truth in those words. The accident that had seemed like a disaster had actually been a gift in disguise. It had forced her to find a deeper connection to music, to trust herself in ways she never had before, to take risks that led to rewards she couldn't have imagined. As they walked out of the auditorium together into the cool night air, Lily thought about the future. There would be more competitions, more performances, more challenges to face. She would continue to grow as a musician, continue to learn and improve. Maybe someday she would play in famous concert halls around the world. Maybe she would teach others the way Mrs. Patterson had taught her. But no matter where her musical journey took her, she would always remember these moments. The fear of stepping onto a stage blindfolded. The joy of connecting with an audience through pure emotion. The lesson that sometimes our greatest limitations can become our greatest strengths if we have the courage to see them differently. She looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky and smiled. Tomorrow she would practice again, work on new pieces, continue to challenge herself. But tonight she would just be grateful for the music, for the opportunity to share it, and for the blindfold that had taught her to truly see.